Welcome to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Joyous conversations about what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about our one reality. You have nothing to fear. You are eternal and you are perfectly loved. Knowing the truth changes everything. Now, here's Roberta.
Welcome to Seek Reality. I'm Roberta Grimes, and I am delighted that you can be with us today. My dear friends, more and more as we seek reality together, we're finding that what is real is coming to us with a spiritual tinge to it. Have you noticed that too? Well, our guest today, coming to us all the way from Australia, is an internationally recognized intuitive healer, a best-selling author, a pioneer in grounded, practical spirituality, and her spiritual awakening, which was profoundly personal, came after the devastating loss of her child, an experience that opened her perception to the invisible world. So that's the kind of thing that can happen when you have something so awful happen in your life. During this time, she encountered an angelic being who offered precise guidance that later unfolded exactly as it had been described to her. Well, that wakes you up too, doesn't it? Oh, this moment ignited a lifelong commitment to her to better understanding the spiritual realms with clarity, discernment, and depth, is what she tells us. Then for more than 20 years, Ina has studied both Eastern and Western esoteric traditions with an especially deep resonance for the work of Rudolf Steiner. And that's a name I haven't heard in a long while. We'll want to talk to her about that. Her new book is called Understanding Modern Spirituality, and it bridges ancient wisdom with contemporary insight, bringing nuance, structure, and maturity to a field that she tells us is often dominated by vague or oversimplified teachings. Ina's work divides into spiritual bodies, astral intelligence, soul evolution, karma, ancestral healing. Wow, listen to this. Spiritual hierarchies and the essential but often misunderstood role of the ego in awakening. And that's interesting because sometimes people say you have to vanquish the ego. She encourages seekers to think deeply, question bravely, and approach spirituality with grounded awareness rather than just passive belief. Ina Segal is an interesting person, and her book, I think, is pretty wonderful. I haven't been able to read the whole thing. I've skimmed it pretty well, though. I think it's fascinating, and I want to talk with her a lot more about it. Welcome, my dear Ina. We are delighted to have you with us today.
Thank you so much. Wonderful to be with you.
Okay, well, let's dive right in. What happened to your child? That's the first thing I think people want to know. Why did you lose your child?
Well, I got pregnant when I was 19, and it was one of those unplanned experiences that shake you up and, give you an opportunity to make new choices or to decide what you want to do. And so I decided to keep this child. And when it came to me being about 8 months pregnant, I went to see a health nurse. And I remember having this sense, this deep feeling that something was wrong with the baby's heart. And because I'd never really had any kind of deep experiences, I wasn't really trusting it, but it was just a feeling inside of my body. And so I started talking to her about it, and she said, "No, you're being ridiculous. You're just a young parent." And essentially she just told me to go home, and that, this happens to everyone. And I just had anxiety, and that's what she said. So that was kind of, I guess for the next few weeks, I wasn't really paying attention to anything that was going on because of her saying that. And then I went into labor, and when I got to the hospital, this is maybe 2-3 weeks later, the the first thing that one of the nurses said to me was, when was the last time the baby moved? And I remember thinking, what a weird, strange, crazy question to ask me whilst I'm having contractions. And then a few hours later, I gave birth and it was silent. And then the nurse said to me, I'm sorry. And the way she said it felt so harsh that it took me quite a while to even understand what she meant. And I remember once I did, I remember thinking, oh my God, something must be really wrong with me, because this doesn't happen in Australia, because nobody talks about it. It's not ever discussed. And I just went into a shock at that time.
So it was a stillbirth.
Yeah.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah, so it was pretty shocking, mainly because, again, there was no education about it, that this could happen. So,
No.
of course, my mind went into something's wrong with me, because this doesn't happen in Australia. So what is wrong with me?
This wouldn't happen in Australia. No,
Yeah.
of course not. I'm so sorry, dear. That's terrible.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
had no
So,
warning either. I mean, that's just
no.
even
Well,
worse.
I guess I did in a way, but not in a clear way that I understood. So,
Mm.
so then I was lying down and staring at the ceiling, just trying to process it, not really thinking of anything. And this is when I saw an angel, and it was definitely feminine looking angel at that point. And she just was, when I saw her, there was just so much gentleness and love and this feeling of warmth that was being poured into my body. And then she just looked at me with a lot of compassion and she said, "It's okay, Ina, you will have 2 children soon." And she showed me a boy and a girl. And, she said, "You're going to be okay." So for the next 3 hours, I just felt this energy of, okay, I don't know why this happened to me, but somehow I'm going to use this experience to help other people, and there's some purpose to this. It
That's
only
beautiful.
lasted.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I think this is a precious thing that you're showing us, because there is so much spirit care for each of us and so much love for each of us. And how beautiful. There you are having a devastating experience and being held in the loving hands of God so beautifully. Did you feel how wonderful that experience was ultimately
I
at the
felt it
time?
at the time. I think 3 hours later, I was back to
Oh,
feeling, you
yeah,
know, why did this happen and all of these things. I think I went back to my normal consciousness.
yeah.
But I think essentially what it did is it made me go, I want to know what happens after we die. I want to understand it. I want to know that world as much as I know this world, or as much as I want to discover about this world, since I was very young at the time.
Yes. So then you went on then. How did you go forward? How did you thought about doing research then, to find out what was going on?
Well, I did. I had a healing experience, because I also had a lot of health issues at that time that actually exploded and became way worse. And I had a healing experience where essentially I was able to heal myself. And during that time, I felt a reconnection with potentially this being. I couldn't fully tell because I couldn't see it, but I felt it. And it felt at one point as if this being just literally turned a light on in my head, and I could see into my own body and people's bodies and understand where things came from. And so that kind of, I think that gave me a capacity, I'm going to call it, to go, okay, how do I now learn to understand more, but with discernment?
Right.
And that took a while. I'm not going to say that I knew it instantaneously. So I started, I wanted to learn about it. So I started attending workshops from, people from all over the world that were coming to Australia. And at the same time, I had studied professional writing and editing and journalism. And so I thought, okay, what's the best way to understand what people are saying? I'm going to interview them and I'm going to write articles about them, and then I'm going to, get them published in magazines. And so as I was doing it, the challenge that I was having, especially being so young, was that people were saying very different things, as you were sharing with me before we started about Christianity and how it has over, did you say 45,000?
45,000 denominations.
Right.
Oh my goodness. It just blows my mind. Yes.
Right. And so I felt like people were saying very different things that sounded conflictual at different times or confusing. So this is where I went, well, because I studied professional writing and editing and journalism, one of the things that you learn to do is research. You have to become discerning. You have to go, well, what makes sense and what's logical, but also I think for me it was about what's intuitive, what can I get my head around. And so, I went on a journey. Like I said, I interviewed a lot of people. And then when I was about 28, I had an experience where someone, I guess I did a session with someone and they guided me to experience in between lifetimes. And it shook me and it felt strange for me. It just didn't quite fit.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I'm feeling like there's more to it than doing it this hypnotic way, because it's just too easy to, I've read a lot of books. I can just be saying anything that I've read from my perspective. I don't know that what I'm actually experiencing is real in this way, because in the past I've experienced meeting people from my soul family and I knew it was real. I experienced certain, past lives with people who gave me identical information without me sharing it with them, because I'm one of those people, I always have, a healthy dose of skepticism. But in terms
Which is a
of
very important thing. I think it's important we say that. To be a skeptic when you're doing this kind of sort of on the edge research, it's very important. If you're going to believe everything you hear, if you're too open-minded, your brain falls out kind of. If you're going to believe anything at all, you're soon going to believe craziness. But yes, go on. So how did you sort of start to find your right path through all of this?
Well, I think for me, there was, again, a journey. And I think it is a journey for lots of people of discovery. So I think, as I was saying, originally I met people from my soul group. So because I just couldn't not, I just couldn't believe something because somebody else said that. And one of the experiences that I had, which was really profound, was that I remember teaching a group and walking in, and there was maybe 100 people there. And it was quite an in-depth workshop. We went for, I can't remember, it was 7 days or something like that. And when I walked in, I just remember scanning the room and the group, and there was one person that just stood out. And I remember thinking, because I was in a different country to my own, and people, so people speak Spanish there. So I was thinking, I wonder if he speaks English or if he only speaks Spanish, and it's really strange. Why do I just hone in and feel this energy from him? But whenever that happens, I usually try and, kind of not push it, not force it, allow it to occur.
Right. Yes.
And, because I want to know if it's real. I want to know if I'm not making it up. And so he, at one point, of course, we kind of, there was a pull towards each other, and he didn't really speak English, as I
That's
found
a little
out.
difficult. Yes.
And he had another friend there who was translating for me, because I was like, well, let's let me ask you some questions. Anyway, at one point, I remember walking in a few days later and just being shown that he and I had had this previous lifetime where he was my brother. And it was very vivid and clear for me. And I remember saying to myself, do not say anything. Don't tell him.
Yeah. See if he brings that up. That would be good to know. Yeah. If he could do that.
Well, yeah. And also because I felt like it was his very first kind of experience into anything spiritual outside of religion. So he had never read a book about it, never knew anything, didn't like, it was just like, oh, someone told me it was a good thing to try. Let me try it.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's okay. That's good.
Well, yeah. So, then several days went by and we were just having little chats and we had a moment, and one of the days he wasn't feeling very well, and he said to me, would you mind helping me with, whatever we were doing? And I said, yeah, sure, but not in the course afterwards, because otherwise people start to think that I'm, favoring different people. I can't do it during the course, especially in this particular country. And he said, no problem. So once we finished, he and his friend stayed back, and I started kind of saying to him, okay, relax, and I'm just going to use my hands energetically to see what's going on so that I can start to help you. And at one point, he just opened his eyes really wide and he said, oh my God, I've missed you so much. It's been so long since I saw you. And he literally told me word for word what I had seen. And yeah, and at that time it was really interesting because I'd met someone else in the same city a couple of years before, and I also thought that there was some kind of very deep soul connection, but that person ended up being not a good person. So,
Dear.
and so I was really confused at the time about, again, how do I discern, spiritually, because I was still very young. I was about 30 at the time. How do I discern all this stuff spiritually? And it was so interesting. I never mentioned this to this person. I never talked about it. I didn't talk about the soul group or anything like that. And he said to me,
so much. Oh dear, that's so amazing.
yeah. And he said to me, that person that you thought was part of your soul group, he's not. But I am. But I never mentioned this. So he did not, it didn't come from him having any knowledge of it.
Wow.
And so, yeah, he started kind of, saying all this, and he was like, I'm actually the one who is here to help you with healing and to unlock some things that have been locked up. And I remember his friend was freaked out and he said to me, "Oh my
Yeah.
God, what are you
Yeah.
doing to my friend? I've known him for 9 years. Like, I don't know what you're doing." And I was like, "I'm not doing anything. I'm just as shocked as you." And I remember that night when I fell asleep, it was like the deepest, calmest, connected sleep that I'd had. And the next day when I went into the course to teach, we were talking about the spiritual world at one point, and I've never experienced such a connection and sense of home at that point. And it was like, oh my God, that's what it feels like. Okay, now I have a reference point. And
Yeah.
whenever I would come near, him, it would amplify.
Wow.
Like, oh my God, this is what people are talking about. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, it was very profound, and it felt like both of us were unlocking different capacities for sensitivity with each other. And it was almost like we were figuring out how to, like, guidance in a different way. And so it was really profound as an experience of, okay, now you have some more steps to explore and to work with and discover. And I think that went on for a couple of years. And, during that time, I also, I met two very important people.
Were you going to see
One,
this person ever again? Who was
yeah, I saw him again several
good.
times.
Okay. But
And
because you could write a novel about that,
I
sort of like
could.
I met this perfect stranger and suddenly he was this. I mean, that's a premise for a novel right there.
I could. I saw him quite a few times, and he actually helped me quite a lot with even working and organizing things. And then there was a moment where he said, "You know what? We're not going to see each other again, but we'll feel each other energetically and support each other." And I remember getting quite upset about it, but it was, yeah, it was what had to happen. And, I feel like, again, people don't necessarily, when they talk about soulmates, they often go, oh, it's someone who I have to be in touch with for the rest of my life. And sometimes you are, and sometimes you're not. And often people think, oh, I'm going to have a romantic relationship with them, but often you don't.
No,
I
no,
think
but
more often you don't than when you do. But yeah, I ended up meeting two people. I think one was, again, I knew that he was part of my soul group the minute I saw him. He was also someone in a completely different country in France. And I remember having this pull again and almost like reading his thoughts and him reading mine. But again, I was in that situation where I was like, I do not want to say anything. I don't want to influence. I don't want to, say anything at all to this person. So he ended up, at one point, it was crazy. I remember I got lost. I was walking to to where I was teaching, and it was a new area, a new place I'd never been in. I got lost, and I was standing there and I was thinking, I'm calling everyone, no one picks up the phone. And I'm like, for whatever reason, it came into my mind, I wish that Fred, his name was Frederick, I wish that Fred was here. And I just met him the day before. I mean, I knew his sister very well, but I met him. I wish he was here to guide me. And I remember thinking to myself, why would I even think that? That's crazy. And the next moment I felt like a hand on my shoulders and I was like, oh my God. And I turned around and he was standing there. And I remember thinking, again, so crazy, so strange. And over, a year or so, he and I started to realize again, that he was, someone who had many lifetimes me and had been part of this soul group. And one day we were sitting there and he said to me, I'd never actually told him about having the experience with the baby because I don't talk about that very often. And so one day we were sitting there and he gave me a hug and he said to me, did you ever have, a child that died, like a boy? And I said, yes. Did I tell you about it? And he was like, no, you never did. And it was like he told me all these things that he just could not have known. It was it was so crazy. And then I would be I would travel back and forth to France because I was teaching there a lot. And I would be in Australia and I'd wake up one day and go, oh, my knee hurts. I haven't done anything. I wonder what he's done. And I would call him and I'd go, did you hurt your knee by any chance? And he'd go, yeah, I did yesterday. And I was like, oh, great, because my knee hurts now. And it was just this feeling of the deepest connection with someone. And like they know you in a way that you can't really express. And so that really, I'm going to say, moved me towards, okay, it's not just a spirit world. There is love. You were talking about love from God, but there is love in a different way where we can meet people and they bring that to us in the physical.
Yeah. That's quite amazing. So, okay, all right. So, did you then you were teaching then? You were teaching spiritual subjects. You had been doing research and trying to better understand how spirituality worked and how people could grow spiritually. And then you began to teach that?
I was doing that, and the more I guess I connected to the people in my in my soul group, the more my perception expanded. And there was a moment where I felt like something is limiting me. It's like I'm seeing things, but I'm still seeing things from the perspective of what I'd read, of who I've interviewed, of what I know. It feels limiting in some way. And because I could see into my own body and other people's, it literally felt like it was like a kind of triangle, almost like a hat that was sitting on top of my head and not allowing me to go further. And I remember seeing very well-known people in this industry that I won't mention their names, but who were, who had a lot of intuitive abilities around a similar time because I was traveling in the US and promoting books and so on. And I saw the same with them. And I remember thinking, what is that? Why do they have it? Why do I have it? What is it really about? And then I remember I met my second husband. So I'd been married twice. And when I met him, I had this experience of like icy cold inside of my body. And like every cell was ice. And I remember thinking, this is really strange that I'm feeling that. That's not a good sign.
No, it isn't.
But there was another part of me. It was kind of like in my solar plexus. And it felt not so much, I didn't feel like he was part of my soul group, but I felt like there is a really deep karma with this person. And I can't just kind of run away from it or turn away from it. I need to figure it out. I need to understand it. And essentially, yeah, we ended up having a relationship. And he was, at that time, he was exploring, he wanted to be an actor. And so he was exploring various acting techniques. And I remember thinking, whatever he's doing, from my perspective of doing healing work, and I had also done acting when I was younger, it's not healthy. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for the nervous system. It's not healthy how he's doing it. I want to find a healthy way. And so as I was looking into that, one day I thought about this teacher who had passed over, but that I had heard of, and also had his book. And his name is Michael Chekhov. And so I thought, ooh, I think I still have his book from when I was young and doing acting. So I found his book and I was reading it, and he kept talking about Rudolf Steiner. He kept talking about something called eurythmy. And I thought, I've never heard what this eurythmy is. I have heard of Rudolf Steiner, and I tried to get my kids to go to his school, to the Rudolf Steiner school, but I really knew nothing besides that. And so I started researching, going, who has eurythmy? Like, who does eurythmy in... I was living in Melbourne at the time in Australia, and I found this lady. She was German, and I went to her house to meet her with my husband at the time. And as I entered her house, I remember thinking, the energy in this house is the purest energy I've ever experienced. I'm curious, like, why? And so her and I started talking, and I noticed that she did not have this black kind of, hat, triangular hat on her. And I thought, okay, I'll pay attention. And so in that conversation that her and I had, she basically told me that half of the things that I believed and that I had been exploring were not how they were, which I didn't take very well at the time.
Yeah, well, I think that's what, in some ways, that's what happens. We form belief systems, and we add things to our belief systems, and we go with those, and sometimes they're not necessarily right. So if someone says, well, that's not necessarily right, you formed those belief systems and they work or seem to work for you. So it's very hard if someone says, maybe that's not necessarily right. So okay, now you have my curiosity. What came of that? Did you tell her, well, you know where you can put your belief system, madam, and walk out the door, or did you listen to her?
I half listened.
You half listened, okay.
And I left. And then at one point, my ex-husband, who never read, he did not read. It took him, I think, years to read a storybook. So he never really read books.
Well, we have a thoughtful reader, very, very thoughtful. Okay.
And then I think someone from one of my courses actually was saying that they wanted to get rid of some Rudolf Steiner books, and we were like, please give them to us. And I remember going away and he would always make jokes about me being spiritual and so on. So I went away for a few days to see my mom, and then he read the book within those few days, and he called me and he said, oh my God, you need to read this. This is really profound and transformational. Now I'm starting to understand what you've been on about. And so I think him reading the book was so shocking to me, because I've never seen that stuff.
Right.
Yeah. I was like, okay, I'll read it. And so I read Rudolf Steiner's book on Theosophy, and at the time I was like, okay, this is different. And it's for anybody who has ever looked at Rudolf Steiner's work, it's very difficult. It's not like a fun read, let's just say, when you first start. It really stretches your mind. It stretches your capacity to concentrate,
Right.
to
Right.
understand. You have to reread many things many times. And so as I read it, I was like, okay, this is really interesting. And I, I need to sit with this. I really need to kind of sit with what this is. And so then I started reading his next book, which was, I don't know, High Wilds. And it shook me. It really shook me because I felt like it was saying that the way that I was operating prior to that, which was, oh, I just got a message, or I just have a knowing, was not the best way to operate without a structure. Because I couldn't discern where the messages were coming from. I didn't really have a structure. I didn't have an understanding of, I guess it's almost like before you build a house, you need drawings, right, from an architect around understanding how to build a house that either stands there for 100 years or you can build one that lasts 3 years, because you don't have the right structure,
Right.
or thousands of
Right.
years,
Right. Yes. Yes.
So, so I think I had a mini meltdown where I literally wanted to just throw those books out, and
Oh,
and then so I think slowly I started to go, well, I want to be somebody who is teachable. I want to learn things, not, just think that I know them because an idea came into my mind, but I don't know where. And so slowly I really started to explore Rudolf Steiner's work from the perspective of that he was a scientist who had these incredible abilities and who, in the short time that he was here, brought just enormous knowledge to the world, from biodynamic farming to, he was an architect, and I've seen some amazing architecture from him, to the schools, to, as you were saying, understanding of Christianity from the esoteric perspective, to understanding medicine. And he predicted so many things in medicine that were discovered way after he died, and some that still haven't been, to how we evolved as a human species and where we're going. And so I kind of went, wow, this is the depth that I've always been searching for but
yes.
was not ready for before.
Yes. How beautiful. That's right. That's beautiful. Well, good for you. And did it then fit with a lot of the things, in sort of fit together with some of the important things you had already been working on?
Well, absolutely. I felt like it made me, I did a lot of let's start from the fact that because this ability to see into people's bodies woke up for me when I was 20, it never occurred to me that you had to actually work on it and refine it, that it was, it was something that needed to be evolved. And
Hmm.
so I, up till that time, I thought that the way to do it was just to continue to work with people and tune into people. And for sure, it became better, but more accurate. But it just never occurred to me to have that concept that we needed to work through and refine. And so I started doing these exercises that he, encouraged people to do. I started learning from this German lady that I had met. So I would go to classes with her, and I started learning more about eurythmy. And I never felt such a spiritual connection as when I would do the eurythmy movements.
Hmm.
The more I learned, the more individualized connection I felt with Christ. And the more I learned the difference between Christ as a God and, the divine entity. And the sacrifice was that the sacrifice of his own evolution to come and help us on earth. And that Jesus was a man, and that Christ was a being that came into the sphere and the body of Jesus at the Jordan, at the baptism, and was in that body for 3.25 years. And that when Jesus died, Christ was born into the earth. And so that just felt so completely right for me in understanding. And interestingly, prior to even knowing that, I would constantly get images of very symbolic images come to me that I couldn't put anywhere. And I also realized that when I was 24, I had this very profound experience with a teacher, and he was kind of, I guess, allowing you to experience various possibilities of consciousness. And I remember coming into his class because I interviewed him again. And the first time, you had to kind of lie down there and see what happened, and really not feeling anything and thinking, okay, nothing really happened for me. And then he said to me, you need to come back tomorrow. And I had 2 little kids, and I remember thinking, well, getting them babysat day 1 was a challenge. Getting babysitters for them for day 2 is not going to happen. And he said, oh, just bring them. And so I was like, all right. And I remember, so I came in, and my daughter was a baby at the time. I think I was still maybe even breastfeeding her. And at one point, and my first husband was there, and so he was looking after the kids at one point. And I walked into this room, and I just had a knowing that this man was going to touch my third eye and something would open up for me. Up till that moment, I'd never even thought about Christ or anything like that. And as he touched my third eye, I literally felt like I was falling into this light blue energy. And this being came to me, and I said, who are you? I don't know who you are. And he said, I am the Christ light, or the Christ being. And this is where I was also shown that I was going to travel around the world. I was going to write books. I was going to help a lot of people around the world. And I remember lying there and feeling like I was in a different dimension altogether, and being shocked because I'd never traveled by myself. I had not written any books by that stage. I was just trying to figure out how to be a mom to 2 little kids, and, how to help people with healing. So when I stood up afterwards, I didn't feel like I was in a normal state of consciousness. And I looked at this man, and I was like, what just happened? And he said, whatever you heard or experienced, it's going to happen. Just allow it. And again, all of these things did happen, and there was more kind of experiences with angels and specific guidance and communication. But I felt when I really connected with Rudolf Steiner's work, everything made sense on levels that it never had, and expanded.
Oh, that was lovely. Oh, my goodness. My darling, we have so gone over time, as I've been so fascinated listening to you. What do you want people to take away from our conversation today?
I think that the spiritual world is real,
Yes.
and that you can experience incredible spiritual understandings on earth, and that you should be open to it, and that you should want to learn about them, that you should open yourself up to discovering, because essentially we spend way more time in the spiritual realm than we spend in the physical.
Yes.
And having some awarenesses and interest and knowledge about it is profound and makes you live your life in a completely different way when you're here. And there is so much to learn, and it's not kind of 1 + 1 = 2 in the spiritual world. It's very, very different. There is a whole journey that you go through. And while we're here, as I've been saying, through other people, we get clues and we get, possibilities. And, for me, Rudolf Steiner's work is so profound in helping people to have a deeper, more clearer understanding. But again, it's not easy. And it was also why I wrote Understanding Modern Spirituality, because I wanted to take a lot of the insights, ideas, concepts, and bring it to now, to the present, and go, how do we explore this and have, more vigorous thinking and understand, well, why do I meet this person, and what do they open up for me, and what is this schooling, I guess, in the physical world all about? Am I just here to struggle and survive, or am I here to really grow and learn and evolve and expand? And where is this all going? And so I try to make it, I guess, accessible to people and give them some things to explore and do as they read the book, and then make them curious, really make them curious to explore. But in general, I think curiosity, open-mindedness with discernment is the way to really start to go into the spiritual exploration of things.
Open-mindedness with discernment. Yes, that's very important, darling. We stay put. I'll be right back. I just have to talk about who's going to be our guest next week. That's a lot to take in, isn't it? But I think her book is beautiful, and it's well organized too, which is very important, because when you have a lot to say, you've got to be careful to say it in a way that people can make sense of it. That's very important, and she does that well. Oh, my dearly beloved friends, we've come to the end of our time together for this week. This has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. I'm so happy you could be with us today. Please never forget that you are a powerful, eternal being. You never began, you never will end. And when you really get that, it changes everything in your life for the better. Next week, our guest will be my own personal, dear and wonderful friend, Sandra Champlain. She'll be with us for the 21st time. She's sort of my buddy. Sandra is an extraordinary spiritual teacher and leader. She was heartbroken at her father's death, but once she did all the research, and she did it herself, and she did it the hard way, she convinced herself there is no death, and of course there is no death, so she wrote her wonderful book, We Don't Die, and she formed a whole career around becoming George Noory's afterlife expert on his very popular nighttime radio show, Coast to Coast. And she has a lot to talk about always, so be sure to join us next week, because Sandra Champlain is always a big hit when she comes and visits us. This week our guest has been the Australian spiritual teacher Ina Segal, who is an intuitive healer, and well, you saw what she is. She has so much to talk about. She did a tremendous amount of research, but she has a lot of sort of inner knowing, which she has, I think she's trying to sort of capture it and kind of rein it in. It's sort of like riding a horse you can barely control. Her book, Understanding Modern Spirituality, is one that if you sort of read it and try to ride it and kind of rein it in, it'll help you deepen your understanding of modern spirituality, and I think some very important ways. She spent 20 years now trying to do that herself, and really sort of in the same way that Sandra did. Now, Sandra just had to discover everything herself. And so Ina is doing the same thing. I think it's a beautiful book, and I think it's one that will help people who are deep seekers to kind of take that journey as Ina is doing. It's beautiful, and I recommend it highly. But meanwhile, we've come to the end of our time together for today. So this has been Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Please enjoy, please make the most of this coming week in our one reality, which is immense, but which is the reality we all beautifully share. Always know, though, that you are a powerful, eternal being. Never forget that for a moment. And you, most of all, you in this entire universe, you are most of all infinitely, eternally, perfectly, and forever loved.
You've been listening to Seek Reality with Roberta Grimes. Roberta blogs and answers questions at robertagrimes.com. Join us every week as we explore what the afterlife evidence and modern science combine to tell us is true about the one reality we all share. Knowing the truth changes everything.